He walked into the glittering ballroom, but no one noticed him. Dressed sharp, eyes full of quiet confidence, yet when he tried to speak, the crowd turned away. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't lost. He was deaf. To them, that meant invisible. Laughter filled the air, champagne glasses clinked, and still he stood alone. But what no one knew was that this silent man carried a secret that would shake the entire room. And when the maid's young daughter stepped forward with trembling hands, everything changed. What happened next stunned billionaires, politicians, and leaders alike. The ballroom shimmered with golden chandeliers, velvet curtains, and the sound of polished shoes on marble floors. This was no ordinary gathering. It was a summit where billionaires, politicians, and CEOs mingled, hoping to secure a piece of the next big deal. Cameras flashed, conversations flowed, and every guest seemed to know their place. Everyone, except one man. His name was Daniel. A successful investor in his own right, but unlike the rest, Daniel was deaf. Life had taught him resilience, but in rooms like this, silence was often mistaken for weakness. As he stood near the edge of the hall, people brushed past him, offering half smiles before turning away. Some assumed he couldn't follow. Others simply ignored him. What stung wasn't the rejection itself, it was the careless ease with which powerful people dismissed him. They didn't see the years of work, the mind behind the calm eyes. To them, he was just another guest who didn't belong. Among the servers weaving through the crowd was a young maid named Clara. Her daughter, Emily, had quietly slipped in, waiting for her mother to finish her shift. Emily was small, curious, and unnoticed, much like Daniel. But fate has a way of connecting the invisible. And tonight, their worlds were about to collide in a way no one could have predicted, because while the room buzzed with arrogance and greed, the real billion-dollar deal wouldn't come from a polished CEO or a silver-tongued politician. It would begin with a girl no one noticed, and a language only a few understood. The deal everyone whispered about that night was monumental. A $1 billion contract whispered in hushed tones between power players and investors. Countries, corporations, and entire futures hung in the balance. Yet Daniel, who had poured years of research into the very foundation of this opportunity, stood on the sidelines, unheard. As presentations began, CEOs delivered speeches filled with polished words and promises. Translators hurried around, but none were for Daniel. A man from a major firm even joked loudly, "What use is a silent partner in a world that runs on words?" The crowd chuckled, not realizing the cruel weight of their laughter. Daniel's face betrayed nothing, but inside, the sting was sharp. He wanted to shout that he wasn't silent, that his mind screamed with ideas louder than any voice in that room. Meanwhile, Emily, the maid's daughter, sat quietly in a corner, swinging her feet and watching. Unlike the others, she didn't see Daniel as broken. She saw a man whose hands sometimes twitched slightly, forming shapes she half recognized. Because Emily knew a secret too, her best friend at school was deaf, and she had picked up sign language just to talk with her dad as Daniel watched the stage. Frustration building, Emily walked up to him shyly. She raised her small hands and signed, "Hello, you understand?" His eyes widened. For the first time that evening, someone had spoken to him in a language he could hear. It was a moment of connection in a room full of indifference. Daniel smiled a small, genuine smile and replied in signs. Emily nodded eagerly, her hands moving quickly, clumsily, but clear enough. Clara, her mother, froze when she saw her daughter beside the guest, fearing trouble. But before she could pull Emily away, something extraordinary happened. Daniel leaned down, signing something urgent. Emily's young face lit up. The little girl suddenly darted across the ballroom straight to the table where the top investors sat arguing. At first, no one noticed her. Then, with innocent boldness, she began translating Daniel's signs word for word. The room fell silent. Waiters paused mid-step. Investors exchanged stunned glances. The invisible man at the back of the hall suddenly had a voice, an unlikely one, but a voice nonetheless. Emily's words carried his vision, his research, his solution to the billion-dollar project. Everyone was fighting to control. What began as polite curiosity quickly shifted to disbelief. Then shock. Because what Daniel had uncovered wasn't just another business pitch, it was the missing piece to unlock the deal. And the men who had mocked him moments ago now leaned forward, desperate not to miss a single word from the little girl standing on a chair, hands waving as Daniel guided her silently from across the room. For the first time, the power in that ballroom shifted. And those who once dismissed Daniel began to realize they might have underestimated the wrong man. The ballroom, moments ago filled with arrogance and chatter, now stood frozen. Every eye was fixed on Emily as her small hands moved, translating Daniel's vision into words that thundered louder than any speech given that night. The billionaires who once mocked him leaned forward in silence, realizing they were hearing the most important pitch of the evening from the mouth of a child. Daniel stood at the back, his posture steady, his eyes locked on Emily, his heart pounded not from fear, but from the weight of years finally being seen. The very project they were all desperate to control, the blueprint for a cleaner, more sustainable energy deal worth billions, was his. And through Emily's trembling hands, his brilliance was finally alive in the room. But the silence didn't last. A rival CEO, red with anger, slammed his glass on the table. "This is absurd. We can't entrust $1 billion future to a man who can't even speak for himself." His words echoed, dripping with disdain. Some nodded hesitantly, torn between prejudice and the truth unfolding before them. For a moment, it seemed the weight of power and pride might crush the fragile hope Emily had sparked. Clara reached for her daughter, ready to pull her back, but Daniel lifted his hand slightly, signaling her to wait. His eyes burned with determination. Then, with deliberate calm, he signed again. Emily repeated his words clearly. "This is not about who speaks the loudest. It's about who has the vision to change the world." The words cut through the air like glass shattering. The crowd erupted not in laughter this time, but in whispers of shock. Investors leaned into each other, debating furiously. Phones came out, recording. The arrogance in the room began to crack under the weight of undeniable truth, and in that instant, the tide turned. The man they had ignored, the man they had mocked, had commanded the entire ballroom without uttering a single sound. The ballroom, once filled with dismissive laughter, now buzzed with awe. Deals that had been locked behind closed doors were suddenly on the table again, but this time, every major investor wanted to hear from Daniel. Not because of pity, not because of formality, but because his vision had proven stronger than their arrogance. Emily stepped down from the chair, her cheeks flushed, her small hands tired from signing. Clara rushed forward, tears in her eyes, pulling her daughter close. She whispered, almost apologetically, "I never thought you would be the voice for someone so powerful." But Emily only smiled and looked back at Daniel. Daniel approached the center of the room, shoulders squared, no longer invisible. He didn't need a microphone or applause. His presence alone spoke louder than words ever could. Contracts shifted, leaders murmured, and one by one, the very people who had ignored him now extended their hands, eager to secure his partnership. But Daniel didn't just shake hands. He paused, letting Emily stand beside him. Then, through her translation, he spoke the truth that would echo beyond that glittering ballroom. Power isn't measured by the volume of your voice. It's measured by the courage to be heard, even when no one is listening. The crowd went silent again, but this time in respect. What began as mockery had transformed into recognition, and a deaf man had rewritten the rules of power. When Daniel finally signed the billion-dollar deal, he didn't do it alone. He let Emily place her small hand over his. A silent reminder that sometimes the most overlooked voices can change the world. And as the night ended, one question lingered for everyone watching. If a child could see the value in someone they all ignored, what excuse did they have?